Hello everyone, this is first episode of Behind the Eyes of GM, where I'm just going to take you behind certain decisions that I think are going to be key for success of the franchises and what I would do if I were in the shoes of this GM. This is not going to be a regular show. It needs to be something that really caught my mind, that I just could not put it out of my way, and as well it just would feel kind of unfair to spend, let's say, 20 or 30 minutes of Road to Super Bowl episode just take on this one dilemma. So I wanted to make this separate thing, and I'm going to be very, very appreciative of your feedback. And today we are going to start the series, whatever this is going to be. I'm not sure, to which extent this is going to take us, with Mike Borgonzi and Tennessee Titans GM, and how he handled having number one pick in the draft. Before we start, or actually towards the start of this is absolutely not Cam Ward hate video. Absolutely freaking not. This pick grown on me, and I truly believe that Cameron Ward is worthy of a number one pick in this draft. I truly believe that. I think he has potential to be top 12, top 10 quarterback. Top 4 is a stretch. I don't see that. But top 10, top 12, and that's the type of guy. You are absolutely alright to take number one overall. So this is not a Cam Ward hate video, but there were not rumors. There was an offer on the table from the Giants, and we don't know the certain package, what it consists of. But from what leaked out or from what got away, it was number 3 overall pick, it was first round next year, and it was some other picks. So for the purpose of this exercise, I took this as, okay, those first round picks are clear, and then add third from this draft from the Giants into the mix. I think it's kind of mid-level of that package. I think it could have been more, it could have been less. So I'm going to take this and treat it as this was the package and why I would actually make the decision to accept that trade offer. So no Cam Ward hate, just want to establish that, but why I think this would actually be a smarter choice if I was a Titans GM. So now let's take a look at that package, what it would contain, right? So you can say it's hindsight. I don't really think it is. Number 3 overall pick would be Abdul Carter, and it would be there for Titans. If by anything crazy happened, Browns took Abdul Carter, or someone like Jaguars would trade up to get Abdul Carter, which doesn't make sense. But let's say we would be here with Travis Hunter. I mean, Travis Hunter for the Titans makes total sense. They are struggling to find number 1 wide receiver. I like Calvin Ridley, but he's a 2. So having Travis Hunter into the mix would be absolutely freaking amazing. And the same goes for their cornerback room. So whether it was Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, I would be exceptionally happy with both of them. For purpose of this exercise, we are going to talk about Abdul Carter because that's what actually happened with the Giants, and I think it was much more likely conclusion of the situation that it would be on the clock and Abdul Carter would be available, and I just could not imagine myself not picking him. Because if this team is lacking something, okay, they are lacking more something, but it's truly edge, pass rusher. They don't really have guys to do that from the edge. And Abdul Carter would immediately step into the room where he would be number 1 edge pass rusher with potential to really be top 5 guy in the league from that position. I truly think this highly of him. And his presence could really take this defense to next new level, especially this defensive line. Devondre Sweat, one of the already better nose tackles in the league. Next to him, Jeffrey Simmons, Sebastian Joseph Day can do some damage, and Abdul Carter and Arden Key from the edge. Suddenly we are talking about at least average defensive line, which unfortunately when you really struggle to get anything from your pass rusher from the edge, it's really hard to do. And hence if we talk about Titans the defensive line as of right now, it's probably 25th, 26th in the league. Abdul Carter would immediately take that to the next level. And with his potential and Devondre Sweat, with Jeffrey Simmons still have at least 2 or 3 years of his prime, boy oh boy, this defensive line could be really freaking amazing. But this is not necessarily about Abdul Carter, which, by the way, him being there is definitely part of the decision that would make me do this. But I would say the most important thing, things are the whole perspective. And I'm going to go one by one on it. So Mike Borgonzi is a first year GM and he has second year head coaching. Brian Callahan, I think. I'm not good with first names. Okay, so it's not Brian Callahan, Titans head coach. Sorry guys, Brian Callahan, no, very close, I mean, for me. So, and with Brian Callahan, I think last year, I was very, very underwhelmed. One, he was not necessarily a highly sought after head coach candidate. Coming from the Bengals who have offensive-minded head coach, who have Joe Burrow, it was really hard to say, like, okay, this is actually because of Brian Callahan, they are doing something great. Like, I think he had his voice, and there's a reason why they hired him. Not only because his dad is one of the best online coaches in the league, and they wanted him in the building. That I think that was part of it, but definitely not the entire picture. But at the same time, like, this is not Ben Johnson type of hire where, like, we fight 20 other teams over a chance to get this guy. So we stick with him. And like his first year was underwhelming. And from two areas, like I did not necessarily see any offensive prowess, any like super great scheme. I did not see that. And two, as a leader, like this team did not seem to be fighting or be able to, get back on track after they made mistake. So that's kind of a problem. And at the same time, you can say this was Will Levis' problem because Will Levis was bad last year. Okay, that's fair. But, one of the points why you are giving this job to offensive mind is like, let's work with young quarterbacks. And Brian Callahan and Will Levis, it did not work together. He did not improve him. And you might say, well, that's Will Levis' fault. Okay, let's talk about that. So let's say this was Will Levis' fault for 50%. I think that's pretty good chance that Will Levis just doesn't have what it takes, especially in terms of like pocket nervousness. Like this dude just, little bit of Sam Howell where like the traits are there, but when you cannot be consistent, when you get scared, when you step into sacks, it's going to be very, very hard. So let's say it was Will Levis' fault on 50%. There, other scenario is it was mutual fault. 30% that it was fault of both Will Levis and Brian Callahan. Well, that's pretty likely. Also, like I said, I did not necessarily see something that would be like super easy, like easy buttons to push for Will Levis that Brian Callahan just schemed and Will Levis just constantly missed them. Like there was some of this, but not necessarily too much. And then 20%, Will Levis is actually a good prospect and Brian Callahan is not a good head coach. I think that's absolutely a fair potential assessment of the situation. And this puts you in the role where if you are, and when you selected Cam Ward, I don't think you are certain that Brian Callahan is the right head coach for him. And I would say there is at least 50% chance that he's actually going to get fired after this year, or like throughout this year, because you find out that he's actually not a great head coach. As I think this is absolutely totally believable situation. And that's one thing that I constantly talk about when you're selecting young quarterbacks. It's like, they need, first of all, they need chance. And second of all, they need some consistency. And when you are like changing your offensive coordinators and head coaches over and over again, you are not getting that. Like, look at Caleb Williams. I warn you guys, like, I understood why they stood and took Caleb Williams, but at the same time, with that being said, I was like, you should have fired Matt Eberflus if you do that, because it just makes no sense. Because he was on a hot seat, there was a good chance he's going to get fired, which he did, and now you are left with Caleb Williams' rookie year that like you just want to throw into the trash because it was so hard for him to actually succeed. You are super lucky when you are Chicago and you were able to land Ben Johnson. Well, at the same time, you could have landed, I think, Ben Johnson last year if you fired Matt Eberflus. So, it's kind of wasted year, and some of the prospects don't necessarily recover from that. Like we've seen it over and over again. So there's like one thing when, selecting Cam Ward has this downside of, well, I'm not certain, and I don't think any of Titans fans are, that Brian Callahan is the right coach for Cam Ward and for this organization to move him forward. And we might be very well in the situation where Cam Ward, no matter how he plays, he's going to be taking a look at new offensive guy next year. So that's problem for Cam Ward and for this selection that like puts it into negative column. Now, back to Brian Callahan with Levis conversation. Because Mike Borgonzi is not tied with Brian Callahan, he's not the guy that selected him last year because he is a first-year GM. I think that put him in a unique situation where it was like, well, you have not necessarily been exceptional for us. You know, we are not sure that we want to tie our hope and our future with you and with Cam Ward. And I would say that would be actually a very smart decision, you know, to just let's hoard some picks. Let's get an amazing guy in Abdul Carter that would actually definitely like elevate this defense, who, for what it's worth, like given the lack of talent, I definitely do believe that Denard Wilson was a pretty good defensive hire for them. So this dude, to me, did a good job with pretty much not much to work with. Like they spent a huge money on L'Jarius Sneed, who was straight up bad when he was on the field and he was missing majority of the year. They had no pass rush from the edge because of the lack of talent. They had kind of no linebackers that you can trust. And yeah, this was like monthly crew of players that actually managed to look like NFL defense. So I would say Dan Wilson actually did a nice job as a defensive coordinator for his year one. Now, back to the Brian Callahan conversation, because that to me is one of the crucial points towards why selecting Cam Ward has more like downfalls than in other situations. Let's take last year and Washington, where like, well, Sam Howell and Will Levis, I would say Will Levis is a better prospect than Sam Howell, but you could make a decision like that team is not ready to elevate the young quarterback. You know, why are they picking one? Well, first of all, it was from much better pool. I think Jaden Daniels is and was a better prospect than Cam Ward is. And the second thing is, it was first year for head coach Dan Quinn. So like the leash for him to like have like okay-ish rookie season is much bigger, you know, with not getting your head coach fired. Unlike here, because here I think there is a pretty good chance of Brian Callahan being fired. So if I was Mike Borgonzi, I would probably put my foot down and be like, okay, show me that A, you can elevate Will Levis and this offense when, you know, we invested in some weaponry through the draft, we invested in the O-line with some free agent spending. So now it's not, you know, monthly crew of guys that like arguably is one of the worst crews overall in the football. Show me that you can do it with Will Levis. Or show me it's really Will Levis' fault that this offense cannot work. And if that's the case, and you keep Brian Callahan, you probably end up with top 5 pick. And you also have what I would see that on average is like top 8 pick from the Giants. And next year's draft is, you know, much better in terms of QB prospects. Like they have to realize they have to actually play well through the college this year. But, you know, on average, you should be able to, like with top 10 and top 5 or top 10 and top 7 pick, get at least the same level of prospect as you get right now with Cam Ward. Whether you package this thing or actually wait and like you get an insane value because you have another top 10 pick, whatever, you should be able to get that. Whether it's through packaging those first round picks because they will be extremely valuable, and you know, you might even like be so bad that you end up with number 1 overall pick. And in that case, like even if it's not Brian Callahan's fault, like maybe you look for another head coach and you have this tremendous amount of like runway for this guy, because at that point the job is incredibly appealing. You know, like you have your choice of quarterback from a much deeper pool. You have another top 10 pick. You have Abdul Carter. You have like defense actually quite solid. If what I think about this defense would be true with Abdul Carter in. So like, you know, suddenly you are not looking for like tier 2 or tier 3 hires. You maybe like go for someone like Joe Brady from the Bills. Like I think for him, this could be a very, very appealing job. So, you know, you leave yourself open with a lot of resources for next year, where the higher the higher circle for the head coaches could be probably not as good as this year because like so many freaking great head coaches were appointed. Mike Vrabel, Pete Carroll, Ben Johnson, etc., etc. But at the same time, like there are still really nice ascending young minds in the game that you would be appealing for. And you are giving yourself several chances to fill a lot of positions. Now, for an unlikely event in which Will Levis works and Brian Callahan works, well, great. Now you have perhaps not your franchise guy, but really kind of a nice bridge quarterback on a rookie deal. And you have a functioning team, you have a head coach, and you have nice asset in a first round pick from the Giants for next year. So you can decide what you want to do. Like, do you still want to spend it for a quarterback? Do you pick an amazing talent? Do you trade back? Like you are full of possibilities that I think in the long term are much, much better for you. Now, with all that being said, I still am on a belief that Cam Ward was absolutely worthy number 1 overall pick. But, Mike Borgonzi situation, really, when I'm like, this is not a sure thing with Brian Callahan. I am like a new guy on the block. I am actually, from what I hear, when Brian Callahan was kind of tier 2 or tier 3 higher in terms of head coaching in 2024, I think Mike Borgonzi was a tier 1 higher as a GM. So like, he's much more a sure thing for the Titans for like at least next 2 years, unlike Brian Callahan. And like when you see a pool of young quarterbacks not like making a cent, one common denominator for this is like they went and circled through the coaches over and over again, and you don't want that. And then second part of this discussion is like with selecting Cam Ward, you are definitely giving up on Will Levis. And I understand you Titans fans, like last year was ugly, but when you might say like it's not fair to judge Brian Callahan after year 1 with Will Levis, etc., etc. How freaking fair it is to Will Levis? Well, let's talk about that, because he played 15 games in the league, 15 to 20 games. I would say for 4 to 5 of them, he looked like the guy that you are absolutely comfortable as your even franchise QB. For 5, he looked like developmental QB that like really needs to take strides. Why is our head coach not elevating him? And for let's say 10, looked okay. This is backup, high tradesy guy, but backup. But he looked like that with a situation of like going through 2 head coaches, going through turmoil of the organization, because like Mike Vrabel leaving the organization was a big move. Like he was there for like 10 years or something like that. So there was a lot of changes with him in the organization. He got first year head coach that was not super sought after, that didn't necessarily help him with the scheme, with one of the worst offensive lines in football, with arguably the worst offensive lineman that actually played significant snaps in football last year in Nicolas Petit-Frere, and weapons that were mediocre at best. And, to just say, well, this guy cannot do it, like how fair it is to Will Levis, and actually how accurate it is. Like, screw fairness, okay? Like, this is business. Screw fairness. How accurate can you be when, like, one detrimental factor that everyone knew about Will Levis is like his feel of the pocket is not great. And when you put this guy with first year head coach that doesn't help with scheme, with offensive line that is shit show, with like one of the worst tackles in football on one side and rookie on the other side, Petit-Frere and JC Latham, to the credit of Latham, he played well. But like, how fair is it? Like how good of an assessment do you think you have on Will Levis with this monthly crew of guys? I don't think it's necessarily that great. And from what I heard and from what I read, like a lot of analysts, when they looked at their like notes, they had similar like draftable grades on Will Levis and Cameron Ward. I think as of right now, you would much rather have Cameron Ward with like Will Levis had his chance, though very, very limited in my eyes. Just 2 years, just 15 games, just like really shit situation around him. But like he had it. With Cam Ward, he's a new fresh guy coming off college and he improved year after year. He definitely deserves this chance and he is better player right now than Will Levis. I have no doubt about that. But, can he get stuck with the same problems? I think so. And by selecting Will Levis, you are giving up Abdul Carter. Harold Fannin was like, what I would do with that third round pick. It could be Darius Alexander that like would really super solidify this defensive line. And you're giving up on first round next year. So there comes a price. If it's the case of do I rather have Cam Ward or Will Levis, hell yeah, I want Cam Ward. It's like no doubt in my mind. Do I rather want to have Cam Ward with uncertainty about the head coach for like next season in terms of quality and even like him being there, or would I like to have Abdul Carter, Harold Fannin, and first round from Giants next year, who to me is likely top 10 pick, very very likely. Yeah, that's where I would really go for the package. So that was kind of my dilemma. I wonder what you think about that. And then just to finish this over, it didn't necessarily have to be Will Levis. Like, I would say like if they were not super like, focused on drafting Cam Ward, I think getting Zach Wilson after 1 year with Sean Payton in Denver, I mean, like, have we not seen this with Sam Darnold? Have we not seen this with Baker Mayfield? That these guys that got kind of screwed with their like starting organization, similar to Will Levis, there is still a lot of traits with Zach Wilson. And for how much shit I kind of gave Sean Payton with the like Russell Wilson situation, this does not put anything out of the equation that I think he is tremendous head coach and really tremendous offensive mind. So having him 1 year training Zach Wilson, or like at least being in the room with him, I mean, that's a really nice dart throw they could have made. And like Brian Callahan, you have Will Levis here, you have Zach Wilson here. Those are two really nice trade quarterbacks. They were really nice draft prospects. Show us that you can work with either one of them, at least to some degree. It doesn't have to be great. And the good thing is, well, if it works out, great. We have our future QB, perhaps. And we have 2 first round picks next year. One of them should be super, super high. And the third situation is like, well, this is with the benefit of the hindsight, but if the question was like, do I get all the package and I can get like 4th round Doubter or on-Shader Sanders, which is like similar to like situation with Zach Wilson, though Zach Wilson is much more crazy, but he failed in the NFL. With Shadow, like I don't think his ceiling is that high, but for Brian Callahan to show me that he can really like to a degree elevate offense and actually prove me that he is potentially good to great head coach, I think Shadow with like, I think he has really like nice floor, doesn't have nice ceiling. Like show me that, like show me that you can at least work with such a guy. Like okay, perhaps trade Will Levis that has diminishing flaws is not your type. Okay, Shadow, like he's not super great, like he has not that potential, but he's ready to play right now. He does not have like, I would say, diminishing weakness in his game. So with hindsight, again, I would absolutely take this path. And it's more, and like the key things are, second year of Brian Callahan, first year really being disappointment in my eyes, and unlike first year for Mike Borgonzi, giving up on Will Levis or Shadow or Zach Wilson that you could have a chance for, rushing through head coaches for a young quarterback is definitely not great. Will Levis, or like this offense, actually working with not much last year, and that's kind of overstatement because it was almost nothing. And 5 is the package was nice. Like with Giants and their schedule, it would be super freaking unlikely that with Cam Ward they would be something better than like top 10 pick next year. Truly believe that like if you take average outcome of Russell Wilson and Abdul Carter for the Giants this season, or Cam Ward, no Abdul Carter, I believe that Russell Wilson and Abdul Carter give them better chance. And even with that, I do expect them to be like a bottom 10 team. So, like unless Cam Ward would absolutely play his ass off, you would most likely end up with a top 10 pick. And you would also probably get like a 3rd or 4th rounder this year to like end that package. So it's not about Cam Ward being a bad prospect. It's about the situation he's entering. And it's about really, really nice package that you would get for him, as well as the chance for like, perhaps Will Levis could work. Like chances are small, but it could be true. Like the situation that he was thrown in, like that's shit, man. That's shit. And I don't necessarily like, unlike with Sam Howell, where like I think he had much better situation with at least having special number 1 in Terry McLaurin. By the way, shame on you, Washington, not paying him. he had chance. Like, to me, Levis really didn't get a chance. Like, to me, that's just the case. So I wonder how you like this format. What do you think? Would you take the package? Am I stupid? Am I Cam Ward hater? I hope you don't come from this idea. And well, I will see you guys with proper Titans episode of Road to Super Bowl very, very soon. Till then, have a nice day. Bye bye.